I might be sitting on the couch watching TV with my girlfriend, and when it's quiet, I get this kind of buzzing feeling.
When I think about phantom sensation, I really feel it, the presence of my amputated leg.
It was this feeling of just vice grip, just squeezing my left foot that's gone, missing.
I've heard 1,000 descriptions, but bottom line is painful.
Phantom limb and phantom pain syndrome are really confusing. And so often people are told they're nuts.
There's 2.1 million people living with limb loss in the US, and 80% of people when we've surveyed amputees have said that they get phantom sensation as part of their lives. They're not crazy, it's real. My mom and dad had a kid's baby book for my first year of life, and when I was 1 year old, they actually found me pointing at an airplane when I was 1 year old. That's my first taste of flight, and it's been with me forever. On my 37th birthday, I was invited to a fly-in where people came to a ranch that had a runway there, and there was camping. Someone offered me a beer, and I said, no, I can't have a beer because my friend Claude, who owns the place, is gonna let me fly his open cockpit airplane. And it was sunset, and when I took off, there's that golden hour with light and color, and it was beautiful, but what I didn't know is the wind had changed and shifted. As I came back around to turn final, the airplane went into a deep stall, and the airplane had less horsepower and less wing than I was used to. Nose dropped, and your instincts kick in, nose up, throttle in, and it was too late. The ground rushed up, and a big bang, and then it got really quiet. I was sitting on the end of the runway, and I recognized I was in trouble. The airplane was crushed around me. There was blood. I looked down, and my legs had two different 90-degree angles that weren't supposed to be there. And I touched my face, and it was spitting out teeth, and my face was crushed. Friends came up and said, can we call an ambulance? And I'm like, no, don't call the ambulance. Call a helicopter. This is my face. I recognized on the scene that my face had been crushed, and that the jaw and the bones in my mouth and my palate had been fractured. I knew that on the field, and it was collapsing, and I was drowning in my own face. My doctor said this should go into exhibit called Things You Shouldn't Walk On. I broke the tibia, the fibula, the heel bones, the midfoot, and partial of the forefoot was fractured and numb, and that foot had almost no motion. If you say, who's Jeff Kane, I'm going to tell you that I'm a family doctor, I'm an athlete, I'm a friend, and somewhere down the list I'd tell you that I also happen to wear 2 prosthetic legs.
Here's the album. It was early when I started the 5th grade at a school that I started feeling some dull pain in my knee. I remember that initially they thought that it's just, I'm a kid, I've just fell, maybe I just a little bit hurt and it's going to be resolved. But then it persisted for a couple of weeks, and they did an X-ray, and it was showing a tumor near my knee, my right knee. There is no anger. There's no anger. I don't know that they did but the best that they could do. And I can imagine that it was shocking and unbelievable for them also back then, that, and everything came up very fast. The time that between like my diagnosis to my amputation maybe took like just a month or 40 days. When I look back, although I was a child, but I definitely went through denial and anger and grief, and but at the end, acceptance. That happened to me, and I've kind of tried to accept that there are things that I cannot change. But there are also lots of things that I can still do.
On Saturday, the Vinton County Sheriff's Office received a call about a woman being attacked by 3 dogs. According to the incident report, Eva Simons was riding her bike when witnesses saw 3 pit bulls attack her. The dogs were home alone.
It happened probably about a mile from my car, which, I was almost there. But there are a couple of houses on that road, and we've ridden by these houses many times. So I didn't even hear the dogs coming at me because I just noticed them, but they were almost at me.
Deputies say that Eva was coming down along this road right here. The dogs chased her down this road. Their house is all the way back over that way. When the deputies got to the scene, they found her bike over in this divot area.
I thought that's my last day. I absolutely thought, because, I was fighting these dogs as hard as I could, using my arms. I had bites on my arms, on my hands, on my shoulders. So, but my instinct was to just not let them get to the top of me.
There are reports that one of the witnesses fired 2 gunshots towards the dogs, trying to help her. None of the bullets made contact. Shortly after, they were able to get her to a hospital.
First of all, I felt no pain. And I think that's the amazing thing about human body, that, the adrenaline and the fight to survive takes over. And I felt absolutely no pain, even though they were eating my leg right in front of me. I mean, there was nothing but a bone left, 2 bones.
They're totally all over her legs. You don't see the legs and the bleeding and all that in that picture. But what you see is Eva's face. She had the fear, the anger, the desperation were all written over the face. She's fighting for her life with these pit bulls.
The incident report says one of Eva's legs had to be amputated, and all 3 dogs have now been put down.
The surgery happened around noontime, so October 30th. But and I had 2 surgeons. One team of surgeons with the leading doctor amputated my left leg above the knee, and there was no way to save, which they informed me the day before, that there was no chance of saving the leg. And the other team of doctors, plastic surgeons, worked on my right leg because the right leg was severely damaged. Torn tendons in the back mostly, just lots of bites and torn muscles. So they had to reconstruct the right leg. I don't know how I'm gonna feel, but I'll tell you when I get there, because I really don't know. I want to go back at some point, so I'm gonna do it one way or another.
Right after I lost the leg, for about the first 6 months, for both legs, there was a period right after the amputation that I had pretty severe phantom pain where I could feel the injured part of my foot that I thought was still there. The foot was gone, but my ball of my foot hurt, like a burning sensation.
Some things that people will say is, I don't, it feels fine, but when I go to sleep, it just starts shooting. It feels like lightning. It feels like I'm being stabbed. It's cramped, it's cold.
I have experienced excruciating phantom pain.
For some people, it's intermittent. You can have pain here and there. For some people, it's like a jackhammer. I mean, it's there all the time, and they can't tune it out, and they can't ignore it. And for those people, it can be really debilitating.
It's one of those experiences that no one except some other amputees can understand.
I'm Danielle Melton. I am a physical medicine and rehabilitation physician at the University of Colorado. Phantom limb phenomenon is sort of an umbrella topic or term that we use to describe phantom limb pain, but also phantom limb sensation.
It's the idea that you're feeling pain from a body part that's no longer there. So imagine in your mind, in your brain, there is a room, no windows, there's a switchboard there, and your brain is kind of sitting at the switchboard. And it knows from different wiring from different parts of your body that when that light goes off, that is your foot.
The feedback sensory loop is broken once an amputation occurs and the nerves are cut. And so the body is trying to regenerate nerves and send those signals somewhere.
That wiring, even though the wiring is not going to your foot anymore, the wiring is still there. And even worse than that, sort of the raw end of the wire is exposed and is susceptible to minor trauma.
It's very similar to what I explained to people when, if you wear a piece of jewelry all the time, like a wedding ring or a watch, and then, you don't have it on, all of a sudden you're like, wait, I felt like it was there.
Phantom pain was not something I ever even thought about. And Bob has read a number of books on it before this happened. He never knew anyone who experienced it, so actually, he was the one who was kind of excited. I was in the hospital and he's like, he was asking me, are you having any pain yet?
I get phantoms if I get sick, of all things. If I get the flu or when I had COVID, I had a hard time sleeping at night because I felt it was buzzing or tingling.
It hasn't been easy. And it has had some, impacts that it may not be like forefront of my mind every day, but it definitely has been like subconsciously impacting my life.
What helps for me is if I cross my leg, and so I have other sensation coming up my leg from the foot being on there. If I rest my hand on there, give a little massage, that helps my phantom sensation.
Really, it's very difficult to find a remedy for it or totally kind of being free from it. It's definitely impacting many people's life, including me.
Someone told me about acupuncture, that might be a relief. I've tried different things. I've tried so many different things and, devices and massaging, but it seems like the acupuncture is probably the most effective for me.
There's no one treatment for phantom limb pain. Sometimes I see a patient, and just by the way their limb looks, touching it, where their pain is, or what provokes their pain when I'm examining them, their history, the way they describe it, I will choose one type of menu, I guess, is the word I would choose for treatment.
And I was taking, pretty high doses of different pain meds, gabapentin, nerve pain. But when I got home, I tried to, minimize it and cut it down and gradually. So that's when I started experiencing the increasing pain as I cut down on the meds.
If I have used any medication for it, I've just over-the-counter medication, Tylenol, Advil.
I used a vibration, a vibrating device, or a TENS unit, which uses electrical stimulation. So you give the nerves a job to do. And those vibration sensations or electrical sensations reorganizes the way that you can understand the messages coming from that damaged nerve, and then maybe not have as much phantom pain.
One of the main difficulties that amputees face, aside from phantom pain, is how do you interface the prosthetic leg or arm with the body?
I did really great for 15 years in sockets. I was able to do triathlons, I was able to compete nationally on a snowboard. But over the course of those 15 years, I started having a nerve issue where the nerve was giving feedback, and I went from doing triathlons to walking less than a block. I started seeing patients in my office using a wheelchair where I would drive to the office, open the wheelchair, and have to take off my leg. And I would be seeing patients by having to balance on one prosthetic leg to do an exam on a patient. And that was hard.
There's not many good things about wars and conflicts, but they tend to advance areas of medicine. I would say in Iraq, I was there between July of 2003 through December of 2003. Probably performed, or completed, I should say, about 50 amputations during that time. And we were one of 3 combat surgical hospitals in the theater. One of the interesting things that we started to develop is how do we connect a prosthetic device externally directly to the skeleton of the patient. That way we don't have to use their soft tissues at all. And so a lot of the research recently in this field and improvements in these fields have been better means of connecting the prosthetic arm and or leg to the skeleton of the patient that had the injury.
Most people that have prosthetics have a kind of a prosthetic that has a piece here that their stump or their residual limb fits inside. I have something called osseointegration, which has implanted this metal rod into my leg, into the tibia. And so what I can do is I can actually change out the feet fairly quickly and easily with an Allen key. This allows me to be able to switch out my feet to be able to shower or go to the beach. And change it. It's just a matter of switching out the adapter. And in a newer version, you don't even need the Allen key. They can have a different lever to be able to change that like that.
So there have been tons of advances in the prosthetic world, which have been great. From that surgical and biomedical technology advancement, they started actually working on sensory feedback of the prosthesis. So we were talking motor control, motor. But now we're talking about how can the prosthesis feel and put back into the system.
This is a hand that is really simple. It uses a 3-jaw chuck closure.
These are simple and reliable. But in comparison, we have multi-articulating hands with motors in the individual fingers and thumb. Anecdotally, what we're seeing with this is that just having that sensory feedback, that visual feedback, is helping with phantom pain.
These days I wear pretty much one pair of feet for 99% of my life. These feet have some cool features. They have a shock absorber and a torque absorber. They have the ability to do inversion and eversion, which means they can roll back and forth with different kinds of motion.
So on January 24th, I finally got my new leg, my prosthesis, and I'm working with a local company here. And this is her. Her name is Helga, and I picked this fabric, butterflies, because that's kind of like metamorphosis. You know, it's. I just wanted something cheerful, so the way they do it, I picked up $5 worth of fabric, and they line the socket with it.
Here is my fancy prosthetic leg that I was too self-conscious to show it up to 5 years ago.
So you can see this leg has a big shock absorber, and if you're going to go running, the carbon fiber has some spring and has ability to do shock absorption. This foot has a rubber on the inside that makes it very soft and accommodates uneven terrain.
Most of our staff team has a physical disability themselves, or they know somebody or somebody in their family has a physical disability. What I hear about phantom limb syndrome is that it can be really debilitating for a lot of people, cause a lot of depression, and really make folks just not want to do anything. But that's usually the opposite of what they need to do. They need to be more active and more engaged.
So we can work a lot of times on identifying, okay, do you have burning at the end of your amputation? Whether it's a below or above knee, above elbow, below elbow. Then there's the people where it's constant burning, constant shock feeling at all times. With our different staff skill sets and different neuro or physical therapeutics, recreation therapeutics, we can position their bodies different. We can lessen that pain to just bring joy.
So I oversee all the different sports that we do from a technical aspect and make sure that we're doing the most innovative, coolest things, things that maybe nobody else is doing. We see the people that are stuck in their basement, stuck in their room, haven't left the house. Oh, poor me, I'm never going to be able to do anything again. And when you finally get them out, it's like, oh, I can do this.
Left.
It was actually interesting because after the amputation, my phantom limb pain was in all the areas that I had experienced nerve damage and nerve pain. Adaptive sports saved me. It helped me get my mental health back on course. I have to say, for anyone who's in my position, finding an organization that understands is crucial to your recovery. Once I actually stopped staring straight and looked around, a lot of opportunities just came. And I was so nervous because everyone's nervous to fail. But I realized you're not going to experience life without failure.
I lost both of my legs, but I've ended up being an athlete and being able to influence laws and lives with people with limb loss. And I thought I was helping other people, but by sharing those stories, I actually helped myself in my own growth.
I think it's ideal to be able to maintain that level of activity and kind of like keeping my body healthy.
Well, this is how I feel about Helga. It's, you know, I'm taking her for a walk or she takes me for a walk, whichever way, we're partners. As I walk today, 3 miles, I keep thinking, okay, next week I'm gonna do 5. My priority right now is to learn how to walk and then maybe hike. So it's kind of a process, you know, gradual. That's the challenge. And, you know, so I take it as a challenge every day. And I know people out there are doing amazing things on prosthesis.
What I find in patients who have gone through an amputation, particularly from trauma, many of them do go through what's called an adjustment period. People are coping with this however they can initially. Some people do it through humor, some people do it with great family support.
This is a very special memento, and it says, Honorary Scout bestowed by Troop 95 to Eva Simons, that's me, for exhibiting bravery and courage through extraordinary circumstances. So at age 64, I have become a Boy Scout.
At some point, I'm expecting them to have maybe a crash, or if not like a complete crash, at least have a time period where they do have to get to the point of accepting and moving on.
There were nights when I was alone and afraid, and the nurse held my hand and we both cried, because you really don't know what's coming. So it's like any other kind of loss. There's stages that you go through. There are times when you grieve, there are times when you're happy, there are times you ask questions and ask God or the universe, how did this happen? What does it mean?
Some amputees in certain situations are actually better functionally than non-amputees. And so I tried for those folks especially to emphasize the positive. You're alive, you're young, science has advanced exponentially and is going to advance exponentially in your lifetime. And so there are better days ahead is the message I try to give them.
Only on NBC4, we are hearing tonight from a woman who was brutally attacked by a pack of dogs in Vinton County.
The attack so severe that days later, the Columbus woman is still recovering in a local hospital after having one of her legs partially amputated.
I've known this woman for 15 years, and she's emotionally and mentally the strongest person I've ever known. And she's always looking forward. I mean, she's never looking back at what happened, what could have been different. What do I need to do to progress each day?
We are adaptable, meaning we can change our experience based on changing our mindset and our thoughts. And what I would love to kind of bestow upon my patients and people who are in a dark space is you're not alone. There are people out there that are cheering for you.
I have no idea how many cards, but they just keep coming. From my friends, from strangers, from people who heard my story and wanted to encourage me, and just an incredible amount. So here's one. You are strong and then some. And this is hard, but you are not alone. Hope you know not a day goes by that you are not thought about and cared about. You will get there one day at a time. You are incredibly inspiring. You are very much in our thoughts, and I'm confident in your recovery.
That's the ones that killed me. I mean, it was like, for a while, every day in the mailbox, we'd get cards from, and I'd have to, you know this person? No, I don't know this. I mean, it was just somebody, neither one of us knew. They heard the story and it touched them.
Every time I see a patient with this condition, I think about it. And honestly, I'm amazed how positive people are. I think positive attitude makes a huge difference in your overall recovery. I like to think that I could maintain as positive an attitude, but I'm not sure. I mean, unless you go through it, you never know.
I try to focus on positive and have a dream life that I want to have. But at the same time, I should accept that there are still times that I may experience some of that grief.
It's mind-boggling. That's a good word to use because, yeah, my life changed very rapidly, very quickly, kind of, you know, irreversibly on that October 29th. But until then, I was very active. I could not imagine myself not being outdoors, hiking, biking, cross-country skiing, running. And now I'm just making my way back very slowly. I know I'm going to ride a bike again. It may be in a different form, it may be a different bike, but I will ride a bike because I'm going to get there in one way or another. It may be a little slower, but I'll do what I can.
I was lucky when I woke up in the intensive care unit. My best friend had put pictures of people wearing prosthetics doing incredible things. That's the first images that I had. Plus, being in Colorado for decades, I would go to the Warren Miller ski movies every year, and Warren always includes an adaptive skier. So the first night out of the ICU, I sat on the edge of my bed, imagining myself snowboarding with a prosthesis. When I got out of the ICU, people told me that I would never fly an airplane again. One of my best friends happens to be a flight instructor that said, and this is a lesson for anybody with limb loss, that the world doesn't get to tell you what you can do and can't do.
So we're going towards the Moonville Tunnel. And as you see this crossing here, that's the trail that they're working on to connect. This is, gosh, I do like it here. I have so many good memories and, you know, and one bad. I'm not very skilled in, you know, an uneven terrain, but, you know, eventually I'll get there. It's spooky. This is the house where the dogs came from, and they kind of came upon me somewhere around here. This section, and I quickly put my bike in front of me to protect myself, thinking they'll just leave me alone. And I walked away to that second house and kept screaming my head off, hoping that someone would come out from somewhere. And at this point, somewhere around here in this spot, the dogs finally tripped me because they kept biting my back legs. They tripped me and I dropped the bike. And at that point, it was a fair game. I could not protect myself anymore, and they dragged me across the road into this field on the left side of the road. Eventually, there were two cars that came by to my rescue, and And to this day, I'm most grateful because these people saved my life.
A couple of folks driving by saw what was happening, drove towards those dogs to scare them, to eventually rescue her and drive her to a nearby hospital. She says if it wasn't for them, she's almost certain her story would have had a much different ending.
After that, I spent a month in and out of the hospital between the trauma and the rehab, inpatient rehab, because I had, subsequently, I had infections in my right leg where the bites and the injuries were. So I had infection in my calf, which required 3 surgeries to clean it out and scrape out the dead tissue.
You can have 2 attitudes about this thing. You can sulk about it or you can move forward. And Eva from day one has kept moving forward. She's been amazing.
Everybody has loss in this world, whether it's an amputation, a divorce, a change in a job. Everybody has pain. Loss is not a linear thing. Sometimes you wake up 4 years later, and I miss feeling the sand in my toes. We were snorkeling, and when I come back on the beach, I love being in the beach. I love being in the water, but I miss feeling grass. I miss feeling the sand. But I don't get that choice anymore.
So there's several ways people lose a limb, and so sometimes it's congenital from birth. Sometimes it is due to trauma such as a motor vehicle accident, or in cases of veterans, explosive devices or other unfortunate circumstances of conflict. The most common dysvascular diabetic types, infection, oncologic etiologies.
Unfortunately, even now that we are talking, more than 30 years after my diagnosis, osteosarcoma, that is a very common bone tumor and happens a lot in kids in growth ages, doesn't have a treatment.
So what we quote all the time is that by 2050, there will be 4 million people in this country living with limb loss. I personally think that's actually very low, because that was based on extrapolated data from the 80s and 90s when obesity wasn't as significant and diabetes wasn't as prevalent. And so I think that that number is actually going to be much higher. And it makes a huge difference in how those of us in healthcare will help our patients because of limited resources. And we need to figure out how to approach people with a limb loss, because it is going to be a big problem.
Diabetes is caused by a lot of different things. Some people inherit diabetes, and type 1 diabetes is a combination of genetics and inheritance. Type 2 diabetes, we think of adult onset diabetes, has to do with some inheritance, but also the way that our culture is gaining weight. You look at kinds of diet. And so type 2 diabetes, having high blood sugar can damage the nerves that we have. And when you have less sensation and vascular disease, that's a bad combination.
When we think about removing a body part, as the definition of an amputation, it is a lot more prevalent than maybe what we realize. You know, it could be as simple as a digit, the very tip of your finger, you know, from some saw accident, you know, that's an amputation.
Things that I've been very involved with for the last probably 5 to 10 years is pushing a national limb loss registry. And it's such a needed thing, because some of the statistics that we think we know about limb loss, we really don't.
I think what we need to do is really listen to the patients and to their stories and get down to the deeper substance of what makes their life matter, what makes them tick, who are they, and how can we connect to that?
December, January, I slept maybe 2-3 hours at most at night. And I had to take meds at night still. Pretty high doses just to be able to, function, to calm myself down. I also got the prosthetic January 24th, so I started using it. So maybe between the acupuncture and actually using the prosthetic, the pain just got less and less. I still have it. It doesn't go away, but it's manageable. I'm completely off pain meds at this point.
We have a lot of folks in our community that have gone completely off painkillers just by participating in programs. And so I really do think those that end up on the couch and really just not active or not out with others are the ones that suffer more greatly than folks that get out and recreate.
There may be 500 people in the United States have had osseointegration right now. I had mine done outside the United States 6 years ago before it was being done in the United States. I had to travel to Australia to have it done.
There are centers now here in Denver at the university and at PSL Hospital that do these osseointegration procedures pretty routinely now. For a certain subset of patients who have certain levels of amputation, it's a really, really good option for them. It is a huge game changer.
I often have to educate patients when they come into clinic, like, yes, I know you just did a lot of research on this, and that may be a prosthetic device that down the road might be available, but currently insurance doesn't cover it, or currently we really can't replace limbs like we hope to one day. I think that we have a long way to go in some aspects, but I think that we've also made huge strides, and really educating patients and the public about some of these challenges is really where I think we can also move the field forward.
There's many things coming at individuals with limb loss, and especially those with limb loss and phantom limb pain that's debilitating.
It's something that could happen to each and every one of us. No one wants to be in that club, but you could be a part of it in a second.
Often people think, this isn't going to happen to me. And the truth is we don't know what's going to happen to us, right?
No one expects to join this club, but you could join this club tomorrow walking across the street.
This experience taught me to enjoy every day. Every day you are given, as a gift, because my life changed, and so could anybody's life change in a day. So I'm wearing this ribbon that was given to me at the last meeting of fellow amputees. It's a local support group that I've joined.
To the person that's lost their limb, what I do is I listen and I say, and I can understand, it's a big loss. You're opening a door to a world you've never seen, and it's scary. The good news is there are other people that have walked through that and have great lives. And so it's up to you to learn from them, to find out what it helps you to go forward, and to rethink of what your life is about. I would never wish this path on somebody else, but it turns out that the view from this path is pretty spectacular.